Hello everyone, this is Rado from HackSoft, and today we are going to explore a specific Django topic about the behavior of AutoNow and AutoNowAdd when it comes to datetime fields. And in order to do that, we're going to have the following setup. First of all, I'm going to use this block article, which goes into more details, as a structure, and we're going to follow some of the examples of this article. Second, I'm going to use the Django style guide example, which is simply a Django project that we use as an example for our Django style guide. And at some point we might go to some of the Django specific implementation around AutoNow and AutoNowAdd just to see how things are working, but we'll see about that. And for the example specifically, I'm going to run this locally, so I'm going to navigate the code locally. So my setup will be, I have Vim open here. This is the Django style guide example, and I have opened the app block examples. I have opened the models, and this is the model that we're going to explore. And on top of that, we are going to have another tab where we are going to use the shell plus, which is basically a Django shell from Django extensions, the shell plus, because it loads all of our models automatically and we don't have to do this. So this is the setup, and now let's see what we want to explore. Now, when it comes to AutoNow and AutoNowAdd, we usually use them in places like this. We usually have a model, some kind of a base model, where we have created at, timestamp, datetime field, and updated at, timestamp, datetime field. And if we do a bit of Googling around, we'll see that it's recommended, and I suppose everyone has copy-pasted a code that looks like this. I have done this for sure, many projects, where the created at has AutoNowAdd equals to true, and updated at has AutoNow equals to true. And the general idea of the exploration that we're going to do now is to better understand the behavior of those keyword arguments that are very specific to date fields and datetime fields. We are caring about datetime fields right now. So let's say we have copy-pasted this particular code. What is the behavior? Well, if we are asked what is the behavior of something specific in Django, our instinct is to go to the Django documentation and read about it, because the Django documentation, let's be honest, is great. Perhaps it's one of the best documentations out there for such framework, for such a large framework. And we open the Django documentation and we read. Now we have two separate things for AutoNow and for AutoNowAdd, and they are under, if I open the documentation, they are under date fields, but since we are using them for datetime field and datetime field inherits from date field, it's basically the same. So whatever applies for date field is going to apply for datetime field. And if we read for AutoNow, it says the following: automatically sets the field to now every time the object is saved. Useful for last modified timestamps. Note that the current date is always used. It's not just a default value that you can overwrite. Now this is extremely important. The first couple of sentences are, well, if you have an updated at with AutoNow equals to true, every time we save the object, if it's a new object or if it's existing object, it does not matter. Every time we save it, it's going to get timezone.now. We're going to see this in Django's code. It's going to get timezone.now as value, meaning every time we save an instance of this model, we're going to have updated that as whatever is timezone.now, which is great, which is perhaps the behavior that we want to have. And for AutoNowAdd, it's the same as AutoNow, with the exception that it's going to get value only if the object is new and we are creating a new object and not saving an existing object. And this is the general behavior explained in points 1 and 2. But there's a very little nuance which is important, because even if we explicitly pass values to either created at or updated at, those values are going to be ignored if we are using AutoNow@, and if we are using AutoNow. And this is extremely important to understand, because sometimes we might have a use case where we want to pass explicit values to create that and update that, and if we don't know about this behavior of AutoNow@, and AutoNow, we're just going to end up with perhaps potentially a bug that's harder to catch. So let's see this particular behavior in action. I'm going to jump to my local Vim and my local shell plus. I'm going to say, give me the shell plus. And the thing is, we're going to test with the model that's called timestamps with auto. Is it imported? Let's see. It's timestamps with auto. All right, so let's create a new object, timestamps with auto. All right, let's save this object because it just has 2 fields, nothing more. And if we now ask about the value of created at, the value of updated at, of course, they're going to be there. All right, and even if I grab a new object, I'm going to say timestamps with auto objects get id object.id to get a fresh new object, and I'm going to say object created at is going to be there, object updated at is going to be there. Now they are not going to be equal, which for me is a bit odd, but because there are 2 different fields and the value for timezone.now is going to be different points, they're going to be almost the same, but they're going to differ in microseconds. So the created at second, and the updated at microseconds, they're going to be different. Which for a new object, I think it's strange, but it's something that we can live with. And that's the general behavior. Now, let's see if I save the object again. Let me get original created at is going to be object created at. Let's get original updated at is going to be the object updated at. And let's say the object again. Now, if we follow the behavior that we have explained and outlined, the created at timestamp should remain the same. Let's get a new object. Let's get again a fresh object. Let's always work with fresh objects. So let's say object created at should be equal to original created at. This is still true even after we have saved the object, but object updated at should not be equal to original updated at. Let's see, this is now false, and this is false. Why? Well, because we have saved the object and updated at gets a new value of timezone.now every time we save the object. That's the general behavior that we're going to have here. And now those are points 1 and points 2. What's important to illustrate is the following thing. Let's import from Django.utils imports time zone. I think this is already imported, but for the example, we're going to import it again. And from datetime, let's import time delta. And let's have some value yesterday. That's going to be timezone.now minus time delta for with 1 day. All right, and yesterday, if we print the representation, is going to be what's yesterday, basically the 3rd of February. All right, and now if I create a new object, timestamps with auto, just like this, but I pass created at equals yesterday and updated at equals yesterday. All right, and I try saving this object. Let's see the behavior. What's created at, and is it equal to the value that I gave it yesterday? It's not, it's actually today. And the same thing with updated at, is it equal to yesterday? What's the value? Is it equal to yesterday? No, it's not. Why? Well, because AutoNow and AutoNow at they both ignore explicit values for those fields and always use timezone.now whenever we are saving the object. And that's extremely important to know as a behavior, because this can be the behavior that we want and then we're good, but this can also not be the behavior that we want and we might end up with bugs. And in order to figure out what to do, that's why we wrote this article. It has a lot to it, and we are illustrating what I did right now with unit tests, and everything is actually in the Django style guide example. So if you are interested in this topic, I highly recommend you to read this article. We're going to place links as the description of this video. Okay, and now to wrap things up, let's go to the Django internals and actually see the implementation and the actual where the actual behavior of AutoNow add and AutoNow comes from. So I'm going to jump to the datetime fields and I'm going to search for auto. And in the pre-save, this is the pre-save method of datetime field. There it is. This is the datetime field. All right, jumping back to AutoNow. In the pre-save method, we have the following code snippet. If we have AutoNow or AutoNow add and we are creating a new object, so this is the case that we're going to test again in the if statement, then grab the value from timezone.now and set the value. So if we have AutoNow or if we have AutoNow add and we're creating a new object, then the value is always going to be overridden because we have this code right here, which is going to be called after we have set our values and after we have called save. And let's see. Let's create a new timestamps. We still have yesterday, but yeah, let's say we still have yesterday here. Let's save this thing. All right, now since created at is AutoNow add, I might be able to actually say object save, and then I'm going to get a new object, fresh new object, and I'm going to ask if created at is equal to yesterday, and the answer is going to be true. Why? Because AutoNow add, which is created at, only gets value if we are creating a new object. And let's see if we can do the same thing. Yesterday, object save. I'm going to get a new object and I'm going to ask if updated at is equal to yesterday, and it's going to be false. Why? Because even I have assigned this value here, after I call save, at some point we're going to get here, we're going to get in this particular piece of code. And I think it's going to be interesting to see the call stack, and we're going to do this in a second. And since we have AutoNow for updated at, I'm always going to override the value with timezone.now. And now to finally wrap things up, let's see who calls the pre-save method of datetime field. In order to do that, I'm going to add a breakpoint here. And then I'm going to open my shell plus again, and I'm just going to create a new object and call save. And since calling save is going to I have two datetime fields with AutoNow add and AutoNow, I'm going to for sure end up in this breakpoint in the pre-save. And in order to see who calls pre-save, I'm just going to print the call stack with W, and we're going to get a bunch of rows with the call stack. So everything starts here on object save here. Now, for some time, we are in the implementation of the models itself. This is the Django implementation for models, the ORM. It's quite a complex one, but we are still doing things around models. Then we go through a manager methods for some reason. And then once we are ready with the models and the managers, we go to the query compiler. We go to the thing that actually builds the SQL query that's going to be executed against the database that we have. In this particular example, we're running with local Postgres. So a lot of things are happening here, but the final thing that we actually care about is that the SQL compiler goes field by field because it needs to construct an insert query. And since it goes field by field, it's going to call the pre-save at some point for every field if the field has it defined. Because this is the behavior and this is how Django ORM has been implemented. And once the compiler calls the pre-save, then we're going to get to our pre-save and we're going to get the value for created that and the value for updated that. So this is something that I wanted to show you. If you are interested in how something is working in Django, you go to the Django internals. I just did a go to definition and you add a breakpoint, you execute the code somehow. You can do it with tests, you can do it with shell, however you like it. And then you hit W and you do a deep dive in the code stack, figuring out what's actually happening. Hopefully this is useful to you. This is what I wanted to show you. If you are interested in this topic, you can check the article. We're going to add the link in the video description. And if you want to learn more, or if you want us to show you more, because at HackSoft we are quite good at Django. We do quite a lot of Django projects. Just write a comment. What's interesting to you? What should we do as a screencast of this particular kind of video? And that's about it. Thank you for watching. Once again, I'm Rado from HackSoft. Like, subscribe, and add a comment.